Welcome to Lesson 2.1a, the first part of the preterite tense. In this lesson, we're going to cover all of the regular AR, ER, and IR verb conjugations, as well as identify 3 AR verbs that have a slight spelling change in the yo form, and those verbs end in car, gar, and zar. Before we can really begin, we need to understand what the preterite tense is. You see, in Spanish, there are actually 2 ways to express the past: a simple past and a complex continual past. And so the preterite tense is one of those ways. It happens to be the simple past tense. The way we could correlate this to English is any verb that we would typically put ed on the end of to denote the past, that's more than likely the preterite tense. But we do have specific uses for the preterite tense, and those are highlighted here. We use it for completed actions, one-time actions, to indicate the beginning or the end of an action, for an interruption, for a change in emotion, or for something that occurred within a specific time frame. In other words, we know the beginning and end point of the action. So how this would look in English is something like, we studied yesterday. I graduated in 2007. Class started 10 minutes ago. The alarm sounded and woke us up. Her face turned red when confronted. And we lived in Spain for 2 years. So those are kind of the uses, but we really need to focus in on how do I conjugate. So for standard AR verbs, the majority are regular. All we have to do, like with all conjugations, is to remove the AR ending and replace it with the corresponding conjugation ending. Now, note on this chart that there are accents in the yo and L form. So our typical AR endings for regular verbs are a, aste, o, amos, astes, arron. Now, I mentioned earlier that AR verbs have 3 types that have a slight spelling change. And these are the verbs car, gar, and zar. So any verb that ends in car, gar, and zar have to have a slight spelling change in the yo form. And this is merely to maintain their sound. If I take a car verb and replace the AR with an E with an accent mark, like what happens in the yo form, it goes from car, k, to se. And Spanish says we can't change the sound of a verb, so in order to keep the sound, car, gar, zar verbs have a slight change only in the yo form. In that yo form, we're going to actually remove the entire car, gar, and zar ending and replace it with k for car verbs, ge for gar verbs, and se for zar verbs. Now note, this is only in the yo form. Everywhere else, we treat it like a normal AR verb. We remove only the AR, and then we add aste, o, amos, astes, arron. So the only situation where we take off the C, G, or Z is that yo form. Everywhere else, we leave the C, G, Z. Okay. So we don't have spelling changes with ER and IR verbs. Any regular verb is a regular verb. These also have accents in the yo form and the L form. And so these common endings are iste, io, imos, istes, ieron. And that's for all ER, IR regular verbs. So let's look at some examples of how an AR, ER, and IR verb would go from the present tense into the preterite. Yo hablo becomes hablé. Tu comes becomes tu comiste. Él vive becomes él vivió. Nosotros estudiamos doesn't change. Nosotros estudiamos. So the funny thing is with nosotros, a lot of the verbs will actually not change because the ending is the same in the present and the preterite. The only case where we have a change is for ER verbs because a verb like comer would be comemos, EMOS, but in the preterite it becomes comimos, IMOS. But for AR verbs and IR verbs, there's actually no change. Vosotros aprendéis becomes vosotros aprendisteis. And ustedes comparten, an IR verb, becomes ustedes compartieron. Todo. So that's how we're going to conjugate in the preterite. Now it's your turn to show me what you've learned. See you in class.